There's a lot of things in crypto that don't make sense. Plenty of things in crypto that don't make sense, that I'm not a fan of. But DeSci makes an overwhelming amount of sense. If there's one thing that we should be decentralizing, it's science and scientific progress. So yeah, I think a CryoDAO was just needed.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the DeSci Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Emil Kendziorra and Micah Mills, who both work on biostasis, or more widely known as Cryonics. Emil and Kai are part of the founding team of CryoDAO, which funds cryopreservation research. We discuss the history of cryopreservation, why this approach has been rather a niche in the longevity field, as well as its cultural perception and the bottlenecks to advancing research in the field. For this and much more, enjoy listening to our conversation. So, Emil and Kai, thanks so much for being here today. To start, maybe let's give a brief overview of the field of cryonics in which you're both working. And I'd be curious, as someone who knows relatively little about it, what high-level problems is your field trying to solve? Maybe from both of you as well.
Sure. Emil, if you want to start, I can follow.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, on a very high level, cryopreservation can solve a range of different things, right? So, on one hand, it might make it possible to have organs store for longer, that you have able to transport organs to, however far it might need to be, where they might need to be transplanted. Right? There's a huge organ transplantation crisis, to be fair, right? Like a lot of organs need to be transported, or it would be very helpful if they could be transported or even stored, which cryopreservation might enable. And then on, the more futuristic side of things, it might be possible to actually cryopreserve whole organisms, including whole humans, to then, potentially, if they're being currently diagnosed with some terminal disease, wait out, in quotation marks, in cryostasis until, medication, treatments, or whatever are available to cure these diseases, so that people might be able to live significantly longer than they would be able to do otherwise. Yeah, so quite a few relatively, high impact outcomes.
Kai, do you have anything to add to that, or is that basically summing it up quite well?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a really good high level of it. For me specifically, it was the thing that really has drawn me into this field was the fact that cryopreservation is really the only technology that directly targets the death problem. There's a lot of ways that we can try to extend life, a lot of ways that we can try to help people live healthier and longer. But at the end of the day, no life has truly ever been saved. I think until we can really combat every single cause of death, we need a way to be able to put people into cryostasis, as Emil said. So that's really the ultimate goal of the field. But there's definitely a lot of intermediate milestones and areas that we can push forward as well.
Yeah. Maybe to situate it historically, when was Cryonics first conceived of and then ultimately also pursued via startups or just companies trying to actually put the research into action? And how has the perception of cryonics changed throughout the decades?
Yeah, so it's a very, very old idea, right? So Benjamin Franklin back in the day, basically, wrote. I mean, he didn't, of course, call it cryonics or cryopreservation, but he came up with conceptually with something that sounds very, very similar, where the idea was basically to stop time for a while and then be resuscitated in the future, when there might be a better world. So, right. So conceptually, it's a very old idea. More tangibly, it was around in the 1960s, 1970s, where the first organizations really started to do cryopreservation of humans, even though it was something totally different back then, right? It was just freezing people, right? Even though, of course, the headlines still call it freezing people still today sometimes, but technologically it's something very different right now. And then over the years,
I think we lost him. Sort of.
Emil. Sort of.
Yeah, what he's saying is that, headlines still call it freezing. Of course, now we vitrify people, which is a little bit of a better process, a little more complicated. Where essentially you use obviously still the low temperatures, but cryoprotectants, which prevent ice from forming, and prevent the cells from taking on all that damage. But I think at the end of the day, people are just more comfortable with the word freezing, and it still kind of gets the point across, right? We're using the very low temperatures, we're putting them in that form of stasis, but it is technically known as vitrifying people now.
Yeah, has the I guess has the temperature stay the same all throughout, kind of like roughly the same? Like, are we still talking about kind of the same low temperatures, and now we're just adding stuff to actually be able to, not have ice develop, and obviously, very likely have irreversible damage because of that? Is it just we're adding more?
Yeah, so historically, it's almost always been liquid nitrogen temperature is what we're getting people down to, right? Now you don't go straight. You don't just throw them in liquid nitrogen temperature, right? There's a process of initially doing a very fast process, and then going down to a slow cool down box, which will take them all the way down to liquid nitrogen temperature over, let's say a couple of days or even weeks. But yeah, usually the end has been liquid nitrogen temperature, which is negative 196 Celsius. So we got Emil back.
Yeah.
There we go.
Hello.
Yeah.
All right. So that question was just answered quite well. I'll just continue on. What
Perfect.
was the most fascinating idea in both of your fields, or with both of your, experience entering the field? What got you hooked, thinking that it's actually a promising field to work on, cryonics itself, versus, other things in longevity?
Yeah, I think because Emil and I both had the idea that I think a lot of people do in the field at first, which is let's maybe target the aging process, right, and start there, or at least I did, and I actually put together sort of this pretty simple, but it helped me sort of understand the field, sort of this longevity tech tree kind of thing, and it helped me map out everything from cryopreservation to aging drugs and so on, just what everyone was working on. And by the end of it, I found that cryopreservation was this very important, I would say the most important column that I had in the whole tree, and yet there was practically no focus on it. Very, very small amount of resources going into it, not many startups, not much not much funding. And so not only was it not only did it need help, but like I mentioned, for me, it was really the only technology that stuck out to me that directly targeted the death problem, which was what my main focus was in solving. So that's really what drew me into the field.
Yeah. And maybe to add to that, so my main consideration was that I'm okay with being wrong this way around. If in 20 years or 30 years or whatever you name it, if technology has advanced enough so that there is longevity treatments, I don't know, pills, treatments, whatever it is, right? And when I say longevity, I mean actually being able to live longer than currently what maximum lifespan currently allows, then that's great, right? So I'm totally fine then with being wrong, right? But if that does not happen, and if I'm 85, or if anybody who signs up with us is 85 at some point, and then I want to make absolutely sure that at least then there's good cryopreservation technology around, if it's not possible yet to at that point extend maximum lifespan. And then again, the field of course is significantly smaller than the longevity field at large. So one additional dollar, one additional person, one additional resource in cryopreservation just has significantly more impact, because there's still a lot of low-hanging fruits, relatively simple to to do things. And in longevity, you need basically now, you need the billion-dollar large organizations, or at least multi-million, to do any larger impacts. So I think these two considerations were, I think, are kind of the main driving factor for me.
Yeah. Where are people within CryoDAO kind of scared to go right now? What are they scared to work on? What are like underexplored areas that if someone would give you a significant chunk of money, you would actually, establish startups or institutes or even like just research teams to work on?
Yeah, I mean, cryopreservation is, a bit of a broader field in general, right? Like cryobiology, right? There's people who are working on, cryopreserving a lot of things, eggs, sperm, right? These are things that we can cryopreserve and we do all the time. So I think, as far as the that sort of broader field goes, of course, doing, whole body work or even, cryopreservation of whole organs is still something that there isn't a lot of focus on. So I think, organs a little less, but absolutely whole body work is something that I would say, a lot of people are probably scared to work on.
Yeah, and that's of course going to be one of our focuses, right? Like, so the whole field is pretty underfunded, but within the field, these areas, anything that goes on revival work, these are going to be our core focus areas.
What would you say to maybe a critic, since I feel like especially Cryonics still has a lot, what's the strongest argument perhaps against Cryonics? Or like where could you actually like emphasize with people disagreeing with either, its purpose and also maybe the methods? What do you see there?
So funny enough, I actually do a lot of outreach, and this assumption that there's a lot of negativity about the field, we don't see that at all. Right, even in mainstream media, definitely in science media and so on, there's significantly more openness than maybe 20 years ago, right? Nevertheless, I think of course there's some people who are against it. Usually, I don't think they have the greatest arguments. It's more like a feelings argument against it. I think the thing where at least I think where the most effort needs to be done, that for people who actually do want to sign up for being cryopreserved, that I think it's the organization's responsibility. I mean, CryoDAO is a research organization, so not really CryoDAOs, but from a cryonics organization that offers it, it's the responsibility of the organization to make sure that the people decide with informed consent. It's important that they understand it's unclear if it works. It's unclear when it will work. And at the same time, it's relatively expensive. And then, given these two, and no one really can tell you how high the percentages are. I'm just pretty confident that they're better than zero, right? And then there's a good amount of people who say, better than zero, that's all I need. And then I think arguably, if that is the case, if this informed consent is given, then I think every other argument against it is relatively weak.
What has caused the, I guess, openness toward cryonics where there wasn't any? You say like Emil, maybe 20 years ago. Do you have like any theories as to what has changed, like in even public perception?
I think it's a combination of two, or maybe even three things, right? So, more and more people have grown up. So when you go, let's say 20 or 30 years back, like on average, the people who are interested in cryopreservation are somewhere in their 30s to 40s. Like it's not the 85-year-olds, it's usually the 20 to 30 or 30 to 40 range, right? So currently, these are people who have grown up with science fiction, right? They've grown up with tech. They've basically had tech their whole life. So they have a much better understanding than 20 or 30 or 40 years ago that what tech can do, how tech is a force for good, in quotation marks, right? But not really in quotation marks, like tangibly how it's a force for good. So I think people have gotten better to, slightly better at least, to extrapolate what tech might be able to do in the future, or at least they can imagine it. So in cryopreservation, of course, is kind of very much in line with that. So that seems to be generally one part of where even in general population, of course, we don't really talk to the general population, right? We talk to a pre-selected group of people with tech backgrounds, with, and so on. And then the second part is, I think, organizations like Kai's and mine and so others, I think they've just gotten better with communicating the topic, right? I think the combination of these two things has made a lot of advances in our public perception.
Yeah, there's only been a few organizations, right, who have really tried this. There hasn't been an overwhelming amount of competition that would have driven them to make do better marketing, better communication. I think a lot of what Emil and I sort of have to bring to the field is new talent, new ideas, better ways of communicating, different strategies to reach people. Of course, my company's kind of focusing on pets, going through pet owners that way. I think there's just a lot that it's been a very small field, and I think over time, things are just getting better one year at a time, and people are kind of realizing that this isn't as science fiction anymore. Like there's a real tangible chance that this works, right? Especially as we continue to advance the science through organizations like CryoDAO.
So perhaps to ask you, Kai, actually the obvious question, why pets instead of humans?
Yeah. The big question that I was trying to figure out when I was entering the field, and over the past 50 years, there hasn't been an overwhelming amount of people who have been cryopreserved. So I did want to take a different approach. And I just kind of wanted to figure out how I could get cryonics into hospitals one day. That was kind of my end goal. Not just animal hospitals, but human hospitals as well, right? I want to know how, and we can use my parents as an example, because those are two people that I would prefer not to die, obviously, right? I want to make it so that my father, who lives in the middle of, nowhere, Utah, right? If, he has, 20 years from now, he has a heart attack, right? And ends up dying, I need to know that there is a hospital within a mile or two of him that can perform at least the initial part of the cryopreservation procedure, right? And right now that just doesn't exist. So it really came down to that's always been kind of my goal, was to get towards a point where we can get cryonics into hospitals. And of course, there's it's a lot easier to get things into animal hospitals than it is human hospitals. So that was kind of the initial goal. And after we got going with that, we did a lot of market research, just talked to a lot of people. We found that at least in the U.S., people love their pets, right? Sort of
Same
a
here.
crazy, I mean, people people are having pets instead of having kids. They're spending a crazy amount of money on their pets. I'm one of them, right? I have an 11-year-old cat that I very much don't want to die, and is like a big sort of motivator and inspiration behind this. We found that just so many people were excited about having the ability to cryopreserve their pet. And we can also go directly from euthanasia at the end of their life to the cryopreservation procedure, and get very good quality cryopreservation. So it was a lot of those reasons together that just sort of clicked for me, at least.
Yeah. And how did both of you then come to decentralized science and explore like the form of a DAO, I suppose, and kind of supporting whatever efforts you're pursuing, Emil and Kai both?
Sorry, I missed just the first part of the question. Could you say it again?
So how did DAOs kind of enter the picture? Like, what was the, I guess, like attractive aspect of them in supporting what you're pursuing right now?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. Like the field is it's a high impact but very niche field. So standard funding methods where where everybody needs to like kind of wants to like, normal VCs and so on, where they want to have something, that is relatively, plannable and so on. So the group of funders who are usually interested in things are a bit more the people who think a bit more long term, which of course in the DAO space is usually those people get involved into these kinds of things, and then just by probably not by chance, but by this combination that people who are really into this long-term thinking, long-term ideas, what might have long-term impact, and the combination of having some amount of tech understanding, more than average, and probably even much more. There's a lot of people from that space who are also interested in cryopreservation. Like famous people in the space like Hal Finney have been cryopreserved, right? There's more examples. In fact, a good amount of the people who donate to my research institute do so in Bitcoin or Ethereum, or so there's a huge overlap between these two fields, from an interest standpoint, and the type of research project that we want to fund with CryoDAO. They're very difficult to fund otherwise, due to the long term and high impact nature that they are, and of course a bit moonshotty as well. Yeah, I don't know, guys, if there's anything. I think these were the.
Yeah, it was and obviously we saw the initial kind of spark and success of VitaDAO, which was an inspiration, right? Sort of how they've been able to advance longevity research, and it was funny because I think when I ended up bringing this up to both Vincent and Emil, they were already thinking about making the same thing, or you guys had already talked at one point about it, and so like, they were thinking about making a CryoDAO. I had already bought like the domain and sort of the Twitter handle, right? Yeah, exactly. And we came together like practically at the exact same time. I think it was very obvious that it was needed. So the timing definitely came together, and I've had a couple crypto startups in the past, and so I think sort of merging those two worlds was it sort of came up as an opportunity, and there's a lot of things in crypto that don't make sense. Plenty of things in crypto that don't make sense, that I'm not a fan of. But DeSci makes an overwhelming amount of sense. If there's one thing that we should be decentralizing, it's science and scientific progress. So I think a CryoDAO was just needed.
Okay. Do you think that temperamentally there's something that also like I guess combines Cryonics interest and then also like an interest in crypto in general? Like, how would you characterize that sort of person? Like, are there overlaps between them in terms of temperament?
Yeah, a lot. I think as I said, I think a lot, because so I think it's this fact of tech is a force for good, right? That usually advances in technology will lead to positive change. Being willing to, both what crypto is doing or decentralization in general, and what longevity and the cryonics and cryopreservation field wants to do, it's very challenging. Some very fundamental, long-held, not standards, but long-held beliefs, or at least a good part of the population. So being willing to challenge them and rethink how stuff should be, kind of comes in both fields. And I think this combination plus this long-term thinking that you kind of need for both fields to a good degree. Maybe also partly the grit to stick around for a good amount of time, right? This might take a good amount of time until longevity or cryopreservation really starts to work. Same probably in a good amount of the decentralization topics. I think this overlap just pre-selects to a certain type of person. So we see this in our member group. We see this overwhelmingly, both in members and as well as people who donate or invest and so on.
Yeah, and it's not just I know I believe it was Max Marty who was actually one of the core members of CryoDAO. who did sort of a fairly large cryonics survey, just to learn more about people and who's in the community and all that. And there's an overwhelming amount of people who are kind of very, very similar in that personality type, who also have that crossover with crypto. So it's kind of we have the statistics on it now. It's interesting. I don't want to say it's all the exact same type of person, but the people who have that sort of longer term thinking, and people who are excited about the future, not generally people who believe that the future is going to be better than the present.
I'm interested in how you imagine if, say, cryonics works out, and I don't know what your timeline actually is. I'd be curious to hear like kind of assessments of that too. Though that's extremely hard to do, I realize. When we have cryonics that works, what do you think the world will actually look like? How will we still evolve in terms of ideas, in terms of culture, once people essentially have vaster lifespans to the point where death is maybe just like an option now?
Yeah, I've never liked that argument, that if people aren't dying left and right, then we're not going to progress, right? It's never something that's made sense to me. I think if you took even just the smartest people and the people who have collected so much knowledge over the years, and you gave them an extra 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, and so on. I mean, the things that could be accomplished is, they're unbelievable. I think I think it was George Church that said, he feels like he just now got to the point where he could really start working on everything he wants to work on. It's horrific that we spend so much time gathering all that knowledge, and really don't have a lot of time to apply it. It's speculation, but my argument would be that as people live longer, they grow wiser. We get more information, more knowledge, and just have more time to apply that. And I think every single time that turns out in a better future, not a worse one.
And of course, the counter argument is sometimes that neuroplasticity goes down with age, right? So currently that is correlated, but it's very likely, and absolutely definitely imaginable, if not likely, that you would just be able to increase neuroplasticity in the future. Meaning, even though you might have the wisdom from 200 years, but the neuroplasticity of a 20-year-old, which is, I would argue, probably the best of both worlds. And in general, I think so. The future. Of course, the details are quite difficult to predict. How long it will take until cryopreservation can be reversed and people can be resuscitated. It might take many decades, if not centuries. But I think the likelihood that the world is going to be better than it is currently, if you look into history, right? There's no time in history when I feel like I would rather live than today. I'm pretty sure if I'm waking up 300 years from now, I will say exactly the same. After some amount of reintegration and getting used to whatever is the newest tech, but I'm reasonably confident that at least it's a good bet that the future is significantly better.
Between you and the people that you work with or are closest to, what is the most contentious topic or theme that kind of seems to repeat itself when you're debating cryonics? Or even you could also extend that to decentralized science, or answer both of them as you wish.
So the biggest open question, I don't know if it's contentious, but the biggest open question is that there seems to be a tremendous amount of interest for cryonics. Like we ran large studies in the past where somewhere between 20 to 30% of population says this is something I consider as my end of life option, right? 20 to 30% of population. And none of that reflects in people who actually sign up and actually make that call for themselves. Right, like it's like hundreds or thousands per year who do that, but far away from 20%. Why that is? That is one of the big open questions.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned contentious. I think the big thing that always comes up for me, and this even comes up when talking to people who are in the longevity field, working on increasing health span or increasing lifespan by what whatever amount. I I think the question that usually comes up for them is, why is death really bad, right? They want to increase lifespan. They want to make people healthier, at least to the ends of their lives, and but and I think the contentious part is usually in targeting death and trying to eliminate death, which has always seemed very, very obvious to me as something we should be striving for, and anything less is just unacceptable. And I think that's, at least in my experience, that has kind of been the more contentious piece of it that has come up.
That makes sense. Is there anything, kind of a piece of implicit knowledge in your field that you feel like holds true generally, but it's not explicitly stated? Is there like something that has to be learned anew by anyone like entering Cryonics that could be written down or shared more publicly? There's no real reason why it's not. Like, what do you wish, in some sense, you would have known maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago?
Yeah, there's it's not the so it's not the easiest field to get into, right? And these are a lot of things that we want to work on at CryoDAO, is being able to communicate a lot of these points better, and because to be clear, like there's not a ton of public knowledge on the science at all, right? It's very limited. And entering the field as someone who wants to build in the field, it was difficult to sort of there wasn't just like a one-stop shop that I could go to learn all the key points to this. It was a lot of digging. It was a lot of networking and sort of getting in rooms with the current experts in the field and figuring out where we actually are, and talking to Emil as well was an amazing resource, right? I think it would be like a pretty big list as far as things that I would want people to know more about. I think whenever you see Cryonics come up on, whether it's on Twitter or whether it's on Facebook, and people are talking about it, there's a lot of things that people assume that are just not true. Even silly things like, what if the power goes out in the facility and they all thaw out? It's like, okay, this isn't a problem, right? The doers don't use electricity. There's a ton of these little facts that a lot of people just don't. I think we just need to do a better job at communicating. That's a lot of what we'll do through CryoDAO.
Do you have anything to add to that?
He's good.
No. Oh, sorry. No, I think I very much agree with that. I think that's a good point. I don't know if there's anything else that I would like to have known in the past. I mean, I've been thinking about this topic for a very long time, right? Like, I've been doing longevity and also been thinking about cryopreservation. So partly I was aware that it's got to be this has got to be a very, very, very long road ahead. But the details, I agree with what Kai said.
So, which resources, perhaps besides CryoDAO, would you actually recommend? As I'm sure a lot of people that will listen are probably quite interested in learning more, or potentially even contributing to the field.
Yeah, so there's a good amount, right? Or, well, a reasonable amount, at least on a high level. There's a couple of labs. There's like 21st Century Medicine and A&B. For the people who are maybe more coming from the science side, they have publications on their webpage if you really want to dig into the science of cryopreservation. There's a big independent Discord server called CryoSeer that is, among other people, run by Max Marty, who's also involved in CryoDAO, kind of from a community building standpoint. We have a good amount of information on our page on Tomorrow Bio, and we do webinar series with like walking people through the topic from A to Z, and being open for Q&A. So there's a couple of things where it's a good starting point, and I'm pretty sure we don't have it yet on the CryoDAO page, but we're going to add a page where it's like a long list of resources. You can look there for that and over here for another topic. But I think these would be good starting points.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of what I learned came through, just talking to experts and digging in. There are some books. I think that once we have that page together on CryoDAO, it'll really help people find the right resources. There's a great article from Tim Urban on cryonics and why it makes sense, which is definitely a popular one. Very very long and kind of in depth article on why people should be taking it seriously. I think I would definitely just keep your eyes on CryoDAO for when we do release that page, because it is something that needs to be compiled for people.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. And if that comes out before the episode or after, we'll link to that as well. Is there anything lastly that you feel particularly strongly about as an important point that has not been addressed yet? Is there anything? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot left unsaid, but is there anything you want to pick up right now?
I think so. So from my point of view, I think there's a lot of people who are actually down with the idea of living significantly longer than currently medically possible. That's what a good amount from the longevity field, at least. Apart from living while being healthy, living longer is also part of their goal. I think looking into cryopreservation is arguably a prudent choice, which not a lot of people. So we meet a tremendous amount of people still, even within the field, who have never heard about cryopreservation. Well, they've heard about it, but never really looked into it. So I think the looking into it and then making an informed decision, yes or no, if that's something for them. I think that's something that I think is that more people probably should at least make that decision, make this conscious decision about it. Just since we haven't said it explicitly, if anybody wants to get involved in that space in some capacity, either with us or with like the research institute or with the companies or whatever, feel free to reach out. Like, this is a small field. We're looking for basically everybody who's motivated. Requires some intrinsic motivation, right? It's not a career move necessarily to join a cryopreservation company and then wanting to join the large cryopreservation company, which don't exist yet. But if someone is intrinsically motivated, I think it's a very exciting field. It's really on the bleeding edge of science, and an exciting field. So I'm pretty sure that goes for Kai as well. But feel free to reach out at any point. We're happy to talk. We're happy to discuss and see, where that leads.
Yeah. No, well said. I don't have anything to add. That's great.
All right. Thank you both so much for taking your time today. This was an interesting conversation.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.